welcome to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. I'm your host, Louis Padian. I hope that you're doing well and are enjoying the podcast and the topics we've covered so far. These podcasts are released every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, so be sure to subscribe wherever you are listening to be kept up to date. So today we'll be covering lots around fibre, and I know lots of past episodes I've sort of brushed over the topic and said we'll jump into it, because there's lots of interesting things to discuss around fibre, and I feel like it's one of the things alongside sleep, alongside protein, that can have a huge impact on people's health but on their weight loss journey as well. So we'll be covering lots around what it does, why it's important, and a lot of the sort of interesting findings and data around it of why I think it's such an important factor for people to focus on when they're trying to improve their health or lose weight. So first of all, what is fibre and what does it actually do? So fibre is a type of carbohydrate that our body can't digest, at least not fully anyway. And it's mainly found in plants, but also found in lots of foods that contain plants as well. And when we talk about fibre, we should talk about it in a sort of broad scheme, but actually we can split it into two. There's usually soluble fibre and insoluble fibre. So soluble fibre dissolves in water and turns into almost like a gel, sort of gooey sort of substance. And you might have heard of things like beta glucan and resistant starch, and maybe even when you've sort of soaked your oats or chia overnight, that they create like a bit of a gooey substance, and that's sort of the soluble fibre within there. Then we also have insoluble fibre, which can't be broken down by the body, doesn't dissolve in water, and adds sort of bulk to the stool, we'd say, or helps with sort of your body processes of sort of getting rid of waste products. Both soluble fibre and insoluble fibre have lots of health benefits. So soluble fibre helps with lowering cholesterol levels, regulating blood sugar levels, and promoting sort of healthy gut, which one of the things that we'll touch on in another episode. That's a really hot topic that's really advancing and has lots of really useful benefits, but often gets misconstrued, or people play a big focus on, or are jumping to conclusions far too early with regards to where the research is prebiotics and probiotics. And we won't talk about those today, but yes, they're involved and related to fibre. But when we're looking at insoluble fibre, again, preventing constipation is a big part of it, and just keeping the digestive system nice and healthy. So lots of different roles that fibre plays, and this is why I thought it deserved its own episode. But when most people sort of look at it, they sort of say, do you need fibre in your diet? Like we've said before, we have essential amino acids, we have essential fatty acids, we don't have essential carbohydrates, but fibre really is that essential, especially for when we're looking at benefiting health. And just because it's essential doesn't mean it can't be beneficial, and just because you can live without it doesn't mean you should. So when we're looking at fibre, the general recommendations in the UK are around 30 grams per day. However, when we look at what people are actually eating, it's only about 18 grams per day, so that's about 60% of what we should be aiming for. When we look at recommendations as we get older, this is something for people who potentially have children and then they want to increase their children's fibre intake. Children start at 15 grams from 2 years old, then they move up to 20 grams as they're in primary school, and then as they enter secondary school, aim for 25 grams of fibre per day. When we are looking at those sort of ranges, what we don't want to do is overload it too much too early. There's lots of benefits to fibre, but knowing the amounts that you should be working with, and we'll get into what foods contain what amounts in a second. But what we don't want is people avoiding fibre, and there can be lots of sort of detrimental health outcomes as with the prolonged diet that's very low in fibre, because it's not just the fibre, but usually in diversity, as we know, the foods that fibre is within, or that foods that are high in fibre, have lots of other health benefits as well, not just the fibre alone. Fibre is usually packaged alongside lots of micronutrients and vitamins and minerals. So it's more of a correlational sort of outcome. We don't think that it's just fibre. It's actually, when we're looking at people's diet, actually, it's not just one component, it's the diet as a whole, and fibre plays a big role within that, but isn't alone in the health benefits of lots of different foods. So diets low in fibre can cause lots of health problems, constipation, diverticulitis, colon cancer, increased risk of heart disease and stroke. Those are things just to be aware of with long-term health implications of a low fibre diet. One of the big things that people often listen to this podcast for, or want to get the benefits on, is weight loss, and has lots of health benefits with being at a healthier weight or improving your diet in general. So 3 different studies here A 2019 review of 21 studies found that people who consume more fibre lost more weight and had a lower BMI. Then, looking at correlations, probably lots of other things to consider, but fibre plays a role in that. A 2020 study found that people who consumed a high fibre diet were less likely to gain weight over time. Again, really good to see that if we're looking to lose weight or manage our weight long term. And a 2021 study found that people who consumed a high fibre diet had a lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Lots of correlations within that as well with regards to weight and type 2 diabetes. Why might this be? And I've sort of come up with 3 different ways that can happen. So first is satiety. Fibre helps keep you feeling fuller for longer and can help you eat less overall. Again, when we're talking about fullness, yes, we're looking at the signals within our stomach, but actually just the volume within our stomach, the stretch within our stomach helps us feel full. And that's what fibre can play a role within. Second, slow digestion. So it slows down digestion and prevents you sort of overeating too soon and allows us to generally start to feel fuller as we continue eating more foods with higher fiber content. So again, it slows that digestion down, slows the absorption of nutrients further down the line as well, which can be really useful for helping overeating. Third is that these foods tend to be lower in calories. When we talk about high fiber foods, we usually tend to high volume foods as well, where they're going to be bigger for less calories, they'll have more water content, higher in fiber, potentially less easy to overeat on because they're probably less palatable when we compare, I don't know, some fruit to chocolate crisps, those sort of things that are going to be high in fat, high in salt, high in sugars, that are going to be low in volume, low in fiber. Complete opposite of that would be sort of fruits and vegetables, legumes, whole grains. And whilst we're not saying that, oh, those are tasty foods and these aren't tasty foods, the ones that are highly processed, highly palatable, that are more processed are going to be easier to overeat on. And that can be sort of a simple swap in a lot of occasions for reducing the amount of processed foods and increasing the amount of whole foods, which tend to have more fiber in and have lots of health benefits with that as well. But with regards to weight, lots of positive correlations there. So we're looking at satiety, we're looking at slow digestion, and we're looking at lower calorie as well. So lots of benefits. When we are looking at how to get more fiber in your diet, so we know why we should be doing it. Hopefully we'll cover a few more different whys here, how to do it, and we'll break it down to 4 different foods or food groups, I should say, that are going to allow you to get more fiber into your diet. First of all, probably the one that I've mentioned, the one that we all know, fruits and vegetables. So these are a great source of fiber, and we usually say aiming for 5 a day, but with everything talking around behavior change, there's all these targets to aim for, and people might say that there's better health benefits for more fiber in the diet, which there is research to support that. Why should we go for 5 a day when actually 10 a day should be the thing we're aiming for? But we know a lot of people, the vast majority of people, aren't hitting 5 a day. So moving that 5 to a 10 just makes people feel further away from where they need to be. And that's not going to help with their behaviors or improving that, increasing their fruit and veg intake. So actually us keeping it at that potentially a lower target for people to aim for, and understanding that actually going from 0 to 1 can have huge benefits. Going to 2.5 has lots of health benefits with regards to type 2 diabetes and weight loss as well. So it's just about taking that incremental step. A lot of people might never hit 5 per day regularly on average, and that's okay. Just as long as we're trying to get a little bit more in, we know that it has better health outcomes, helps them manage their weight a little better, adds a bit more diversity to their diet as well, can help with health implications further down the line. So as we said, 5 a day is the aim. Things that, or fruits and vegetables that have good amounts of fibre, I've just got 4 that we've listed here. I've just picked 4 decent ones. So per 100 grams, figs have 7 grams of fibre, strawberries have 3.8, per 100 grams, parsnips have 4.7, broccoli has 2.8. So just as having those foods dotted in throughout the day helps us move towards that 30 where we're trying to aim for, or that 5 a day that we're trying to include. So just having a look at what 5 a day is associated with, it's a 30% lower risk of death of all causes, a better weight loss results long term, better or bigger reductions in waist circumference, and 20% lower risk of becoming obese in the long term. So those sort of things, just increasing fruits and vegetable intake is associated with those outcomes, which can be quite remarkable on people's journeys. So fruits and veg, number 1. Number 2 is whole grains over sort of refined grains. So they're a great source of fiber, and again, slow down digestion, help with managing sort of your fullness levels, and can be slightly higher in calories, but a lot of those calories might not be absorbed. If we're looking at how calories are calculated, fiber is often accounted for being fully absorbed when we know that some of it, or quite the vast majority of it, isn't. So that's where it can be a better choice. If we're taking toast in the morning, going from a white slice of bread or 2 slices of white bread to whole grain bread, might be more calories in the short term, but might keep you fuller for longer. And that could be a better choice overall in the long term. If that stops you snacking in the next hour or two and eating more calories in the long term, then that could be a better choice for people if they're trying to manage their weight. And that sort of thing that we need to, when we're looking at these behavior changes, understand that these don't happen in isolation. They have ripple effects. And having more whole grains, more fruits and veggies in your diet will help you manage your energy intake a lot better long term. So things per 100 grams, picked out a few different sort of whole grains. So wheat and bran cereals range from 13 grams to 25 grams of fiber per 100 grams. You won't be probably having 100 grams of cereal per day, but if we knock that down to 50, you could be getting over half of your fiber intake just in that meal there. And we know that can have lots of implications with regards to health, but also managing your appetite a bit better. Whole grain bread, 7 grams, and whole grain spaghetti, 4.2 grams per 100. These ones in isolation, we're not just looking at, right, we're going to focus on getting my whole grain servings to three servings of whole grains, or making sure that I'm choosing more whole grains more often than not. It's actually going, well, if I can increase my fruit and veg by maybe 1 serving per day, if I have a look at my whole grains alongside the other foods we're going to talk about, then actually I could boost my fiber intake by 10-15 grams quite easily on average per day, which will help me feel fuller, help me manage my calories. They're probably going to be more filling, they're going to be less easy to overeat, and adding a bit more diversity to my diet. And yes, the unsexy stuff around health long term isn't the thing that usually sells. Yes, weight loss is something that can definitely have a positive impact on, but it's the thing about reduction of type 2 diabetes, reduction of stroke, reduction of all-cause mortality long term. Just fiber's fantastic for things like that. So whole grains, having more whole grains in your diet is associated with 20% lower risk of death from all causes, 27% lower risk of heart disease, greater weight loss, great reduction in body fat percentage as well. So those are things that people are aiming for, and 32% lower risk of developing central obesity. So when we talk about central obesity, that's sort of around the abdominal area, which has more risk. So when we're looking at people managing or observing and monitoring their weight long term, weight could be a useful metric, but has its downsides and has its drawbacks. Same with BMI, that it's a good tool, but in isolation it could be not great. Central obesity can be a really useful one, so looking at people's waist circumference. So that's an area that if we're combining weight, BMI, and central obesity, and maybe if we can get a monitor of other factors, of other circumferences as well, get a better overall picture of how people's bodies are changing and where they're storing most of their body fat. If you're storing it mostly around your organs around the midsection, that's associated with higher risks of things like type 2 diabetes, stroke, and health implications long term. So that's what that means. So more whole grains in diet, 32% lower risk of developing central obesity, which is pretty impressive. Number 3 on the list is eating legumes. And this one can be a really good one. And if you haven't already, grab the recipe pack from my website. The link will be in the description. And it's a free recipe pack. And in that, there's lots of different diets and lots of different recipes in there that include beans, lentils, legumes. There's a black bean brownie, I think, in there. And that's sort of one that would be really surprising for a lot of people to try, that actually tastes quite a lot like the real thing, really gooey, but increasing their fiber content within these recipes by adding more lentils, legumes, peas, beans to your meals just bulks up that fiber, bulks up the amount of volume in that meal, reduces the calories, and it's a win-win for most people in what they're trying to achieve. So per 100 grams, and we're looking at a few different examples. Peas have just under 6 grams of fiber. Baked beans have 5 grams per 100 grams, and green beans have 4 grams. Again, putting all these meals together, if we are looking at a fry up in the morning and we're going from normal sort of white bread to a tin of beans with some pork high fat sausages, we can make a few changes in there by adding in some more reduced sugar, reduced salt beans. Could have some chicken, so it's a bit leaner on the protein side of things, and go for a whole grain there. That's me going, right, as a coach, I'm still saying, brilliant, you can have your fry up. I'm not going to take it away from you because it's a really enjoyable and delicious meal, and a lot of people really enjoy it. Yes, we might need to moderate how often we're having it, but making some simple swaps in there allows you to still enjoy that meal, but also improve health outcomes, make sure it's aligned with your values and your goals long term. So again, away with the days where we're saying that you can't have these meals, you can't have these foods, making these simple swaps that we can swap in there to increase the fiber content, reduce the saturated fat content, reduce the amount of processed foods, potentially increasing the amount of volume from those meals, increasing our fiber days. All simple things that we need to pick apart and go, right, maybe there's an opportunity here for that, opportunity here for that. And going from first meal to that second meal can make the world of difference for a lot of people, just trying to do that more consistently. So back to eating legumes and beans and lentils and peas. So the great source of fiber, but also have a bit of protein there, which is fantastic. But eating half a cup of legumes per day was associated with 10% lower risk of heart disease, 15% lower risk of type 2 diabetes, greater weight loss and greater reduction of waist circumference, which is fantastic, and 23% lower risk of developing obesity. As you probably see, the common trend here. And we're not saying that it's just fiber, but as I've said, these foods have fiber in them, but that's also packaged up with greater volume, greater vitamins and minerals, more filling, less likely to overeat later on. These are all things that are going to help us where we want to be with regards to our weight and our health long term. So, legumes number 3. Last but not least, nuts and seeds to your diet. So nuts and seeds, great source of fiber, protein, and have some unsaturated fats in there, or polyunsaturated fats, or monounsaturated fats in there, which we'll cover soon, as that's definitely why to do this together. So per 100 grams, got some nuts and seeds. So per 100 grams is how much fiber they have. So almonds, 7.5, peanuts, 7.5 as well. Sesame has 8, sunflower seeds have 6. With these, there is the caveat of having lots of these can potentially because they've got greater fat content, be higher in calories. So if we're having peanuts, for example, going hell for leather on peanuts because the fiber content probably is putting the carriage before the horse, when actually it can be a great addition amongst meals to add a bit more diversity in flavors, textures, and a bit more diversity of nutrients in there as well. So one of the things that we find in Asia at the moment is cashew curry, so adding some fresh roasted cashews to a curry with some fruits and with some vegetables and some noodles in there adds a lot more diversity to that meal as well, but actually makes it a lot more filling and enjoyable, and those textures in there. So when we're looking at nuts and seeds, probably shouldn't feature as much as the other foods in there as frequently, but definitely something that should feature. And when we look at the research, 5 servings of nuts and seeds per week, so maybe once per day, that's more than enough. That's a good amount. And these were associated with 14% lower risk of death from all causes, 28% lower risk of heart disease, losing more weight, and greater reduction around the waist circumference. Again, seeing the trends here around all-cause mortality, sort of heart disease or cardiovascular disease, waist circumference and weight, and then 90% lower risk of developing obesity. So those are the 4 foods that potentially you can increase to increase your fiber content. With that, I've said you're getting lots of other benefits with it. It's not just fiber, but fiber is a key component within those. So to conclude, fiber is not essential, but probably should be featuring quite a bit in people's diet. Label it technically essential. People who have very low fiber diets don't tend to have good health outcomes, and their diet's probably not that great, and it's a simple and easy fix to improve. So it's important for people's general health well-being, but also managing your weight and performance as well. Can help with weight loss, as we've seen the statistics there, can help with central obesity or waist circumference, but managing or reducing the risk of type 2 diabetes, managing your weight a little bit better. So huge wins there. And to get more fiber in your diet, these 4 foods I'd look to sprinkle in throughout the day. You don't have to go hell for leather on any of them. If you can increase them all significantly, fantastic, but start gradually and do it so it's more sustainable long term would be my message, that we're not going on a diet, we're improving our current diet. So those fruits and vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds. So there you have it. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. If you have any questions, queries, or would like to reach out to me, please do. I am at Louis Padian Nutrition, which is at LOUISPADIAN Nutrition on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all other social media platforms. If you're looking for support in achieving your goals and living a healthier, happier, and more balanced life in the process, click the link below and inquire about working with me. Remember to subscribe to the Balanced Approach podcast wherever you're listening for more insightful episodes, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.